Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the book launch event on Doing Good Better in Singapore. I hope you enjoyed the tea and had the chance to visit our 7 booths outside. We will now begin the panel sessions. In the first panel session, our panelists will deliver a short sharing session on how charities should resource for and adapt to the future. First, we would like to invite our panelist, Dr. Ang Hak Sing, the Commissioner of Charities, back on stage. Next, we have Mr. Sim Kim Guan, CEO of the National Council of Social Service. Last but not least, we also have with us Mr. Tim Uy, CEO of the National Kidney Foundation, with us in the panel. The session will be moderated by Ms. Pei Kim Chu, CEO of SAL Foundation. Please join me in giving our panelists and moderator a warm welcome.
All right, thank you everyone, and I hope you all had good tea, had a good tea break. So we're going to start this session, panel 1, and this, I think, basically it is will be a very interesting session, hopefully, because what we are going to talk about is really how the social service organizations in Singapore will really be. How do we get together? How do we going to meet the challenges for the future? And I think all of us here know that, for the longest time, the SSO, the social service organizations in Singapore, play a very integral role, in this many hands approach, in the service delivery in Singapore. And so that will not change. I do not think that will change. But what is changing, and what is changing very swiftly, is really the context in which we are working in. Right? I think you've heard already in the first session, various speakers talking about, for instance, the aging population, that by the year 2030, we will get 900,000 older people 65 and above. But it's not just the number of the older persons, right? But it's also the implications. What does an aging population mean for us? What does having a society of longer lives mean to us? Yeah. What would its effect be on work, for instance, how work is being organized, how our economy will be organized, and how about health? How about health and social care? How will they be delivered? Those are really some of the key implications that we all need to start thinking, need to start looking at what we can do, in the future. And of course, the other trend that is a twin trend really coming up together with this aging population is that the trend of smaller families, nuclear families, different living arrangement, that most families are, there will be more people living on their own, families will be nuclear. Again, how would that really in fact affect the areas around work, how we live, so that is a lot of all these implications with this changing context. And so today, we have 3 very esteemed gentlemen here. I think they all need no introduction, who they are. So we're going to start, first of all, we're going to invite Mr. Sim Kim Guan, CEO of NCSS, to actually share with us, what then is NCSS doing about all this? What would the role of NCSS be moving forth, in helping all of us social service organizations to meet these challenges? Mr. Sim, please. Oh, the clicker.
Okay, you find that some of my remarks are going to be quite similar to what the Minister had made during his opening address. So I'm going to skim through those, because I don't think you need to hear a repeat. But I think generally the approach we have taken in terms of trying to strengthen the individual, Then, of course, the individual in the context of the family and how we are able to better involve the community, helping vulnerable population, will continue to be the model that we will use. But looking at the challenges, we also know that while we may have this model with shrinking family, with aging population, I think we need to also then look at what are the issues that presents itself, right? The model has worked for us very well, but what else do we need to look at? So the challenges before us, especially in the area of disruption due to technology. In many of our studies on the quality of life, one of the things that we find to be most important in enhancing quality of life is employment. When someone with a disability, with a mental health issue, low income, if they are not able to secure employment, their quality of life plummets, right? So there are a lot of things that we are trying to do in terms of how we can support the vulnerable population in terms of employment. But these are trends that we can see, and I'm quite sure that even as you, organizations working on the ground, working with different groups of people, you are also seeing things that are happening. So we need to be constantly aware of what are the issues that are going to present itself. We need to constantly be doing research. Research not just in terms of trend, but also in terms of approach that we need to take. And we need to develop strategies around how do we deal with the issues that confront us as a society. So, this was the attempt that NCSS took about 2 years back in terms of working with our key stakeholders, our 3P partner, people from the private sector, the public sector, as well as people sector, to develop a broad strategy for how we might want to move forward. The last time NCSS developed a blueprint for the social service was about 25 years ago. And when we look back at what was said then and what has transpired over the last 25 years, we saw a lot of the issues that we looked at, things moving. But of course, as in all strategy, there is nothing that is going to stand the test of time. The relevance of what we do, we need to continue to review. So this is a 5-year plan, but it is a moving 5-year plan. But the core point about empowering individuals, the family and the community, this is still the key cornerstone. But also understanding the key roles that our member organization does. Then the question is, how do we enhance the capability of organizations so that they continue to be able to develop initiatives that are effective and innovative and productive, right? And then, of course, the last point about engaging the community. This is something that I think we need to do more of. And that's why you may have heard a lot about SG Cares in terms of what we're doing under the broad umbrella of SG Cares movement. It is really about involving the community. If you think about all your service users that you touch, how much time do you engage and how much time do you have intervention with your service user? You find that it is minuscule compared to the time they spend within the larger community. So unless we are bringing the community in, the quality of life of our service user will not be as good as it can be. So this is the broad frame that we have developed. This is something that will continue to guide the work that we do. And we want to really work with you, our member organization in particular, but also our other 3P partners, right? The corporates who come in to support our organization, and of course, other parts of the government, the public sector. So, these are some of the things that I thought we will need to look at in terms of what it means to build a more sustainable, more effective social service ecosystem. Minister talked a lot about going to the last mile. He mentioned about the experiment and the pilot that they're trying to do with the rental housing. So how can we ensure that we take a person-centric approach, and in this case, a family-centric approach, and bring services that will then impact each of these family in a way that makes the most effective change in their lives. And then, of course, we talk about investing in people, what we need to do. At the end of the day, organizations are made out of people. So unless we constantly look at how we can invest in the capability of people, then the capability of organization will be hampered and limited. And innovation, I think my brother here talked a lot about productivity. And we believe that innovation is going to allow us to make best use of the resource that we have to bring about the greatest effect, how we are able to improve the quality of life of our people. And the last point, collaboration. It is only possible if we continue to have this mindset of collaborating with all key stakeholders that we will be able to make the most change. So with that, I'm going to hand back to our moderator.
Oh, no, but before that, Mr. Singh, I just want to ask, so what are some of the specific initiatives that NCSS has, spearheaded, using this, in alignment with this framework?
Okay. So all this scripted lah. Okay. So I know my moderator is going to ask this question. So I decided we're going to have 2 slides. Okay. So if you look at some of the initiatives that we have embarked on over the years, a lot of it is centered around building human capability, human capacity. And actually, we have recently also started to do work in terms of organizational development. But of course, you must see the work that NCSS does in the context of what is happening in the larger ecosystem, right? Working in concert with Charity Council in terms of governance. Of course, a lot of work on the non-profit director program. CMPL in terms of what they do to bring in volunteers onto the board of our member organization. What MVPC is doing in terms of encouraging philanthropy and giving. So in that broader context, we have to decide how can we, even within the public sector, work more collaboratively so that our impact is actually enhanced. There is greater synergy in the work we do. So a lot of the work we do in NCSS centered around human capital, training. Even training, we have to look at how we can better enhance the way our people learn, right? If you look at the newer generation of people who are coming up from the polys and from school, they learn differently from what we used to do, right? So we need to adapt how we are able to support their learning. If we are continuing with the old traditional method of classroom face-to-face, then we are constrained and limited in our approach. If we are constrained by only what we do at SSI, then we are similarly going to be limited in our impact. So we have also gone out to our member organization, many of whom are experts in their own right in certain areas, to support the work we do in terms of doing training for the broader sector, right? And then of course we talk about innovation and technology, what we are able to do in terms of productivity. And then I just want to mention iShine Cloud. It is correct for our organizations to be focusing on their front-end services, the intervention and initiatives that touch the lives of their service users. But we also know that you cannot ignore your back-end, right? You cannot ignore all your corporate capabilities. So this collaboration we have with Singapore Pools to develop this iShine Cloud, which is a platform for you to leverage on, so that you have someone else there to help you with your back-end function, and you can continue to devote most of your bandwidth in terms of your service intervention. So I hope that I want to encourage you to look seriously at how you are able to leverage on things that are already happening so that you as an organization can grow and become better. The second slide I want to talk about is that, we've been talking about impact. And so this is something that NCSS wants to work on over the next 1 to 2 years. And of course, we are going to involve both our member organization as well as our partners from the private sector to think about how do we define the impact of the work that we do at the organizational level, at the program level, but also as an ecosystem, right? The QOL, the quality of life, is perhaps one measure that we can use to look at over the last 5 years, how has the quality of life of our service users change over the years? But beyond that, are there other measures we can use? So we are also looking at some of the tools that are being used in other countries, and perhaps we can come together to define something that works for us in the context that we do. With better articulation of the impact, I believe it is also clear that we are better able to reach out to those who support us, because they can see how the work we do have impacted lives. And with greater support from the community, from our donors, then you will be able to do even greater work. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Sim has shared the slew of our initiatives that NCSS has come up with. I hope we all have a lot of questions for him later on during the Q&A. So next, I would like to invite Mr. Tim Wee. Tim is the CEO of National Kidney Foundation to share with us, really, as one of the biggest SSO in Singapore, how does NKF take on this challenge, at the board level, as well as at the management and also at the staff level. So how do they take on this challenge to meet the future needs, the future challenges, the future environment? Okay, so Tim, yours.
Thank you. I'm not sure how many of you know really what NKF does, except for what you read in the papers. I think Mr. Yi knows it very well. NKF actually supports about 70% of the kidney dialysis patients in Singapore. Our longest dialysis patient is 39 years. He's been dialyzing for 39 years. Our life expectancy has dropped from 12 years to about 10 years on an average. It doesn't mean that we are providing worse service. It's a product of the aging population. Our patients are coming in on a much older, more frail, and with more issues. Kidney dialysis is the tail end of diabetic issues, hypertension issues. We even have dialysis patients who have dementia. And these are some of the more severe challenges of the aging tsunami as it is coming in. Thankfully, the number of younger people having kidney failure is not climbing. The increase is due to aging. So if anything, you live today, I would like you to remember to look after your health, because it is something that creeps up on you without you knowing about it. But operationally, on a more operational ground level, there are three concerns that me and my colleagues are concerned about. The strengthening of the family. Many a times on an operational level, we tend to focus on the KPIs given to us. How many patients you serve, how much treatment do you give, your costs. But we neglect the family unit and how the family unit can augment some of the work we do. So in NKF, we actually have created caregiver support groups and engaging caregivers. We find that some of the issues are not with the patients. It is the caregivers that are posing the challenge. Recently, we had to ban a caregiver from coming into the center because he was threatening patients, threatening staff, and being physically and verbally abusive. Those are some of the stresses of chronic illness, not necessarily to the patient, but also to their caregivers. And caregivers are a group of segments we can actually harness to do a lot of support work. The target for us now is to go after the caregivers of our patients. They are the high-risk groups that will be future dialysis patients because of lifestyle, because of genetics. And if we don't work with the family as a whole, we are not addressing the problems of increasing numbers. And those are one of the issues on the ground we are facing. The other issue is tradition and innovation. Many times we talk about innovation, but I get back from my staff is, what do you do with the KPIs you just gave me? I got KPIs to meet, I don't have resources to innovate, what do we do? So this is where, as management, we have to find time and space to be able to innovate. And this is the challenge we face on the ground. So we do look for additional resources, funding, but the double-edged sword, we look for funding and we use the same people, it's not going to help us. So how do you get additional? So we use a lot more volunteers, skill-based volunteers, to augment some of this work that we need to do. And we work it within the schedule. The last point is be nimble in utilizing resources. There again goes, how do you be nimble when I have so many patients to look after, so many things to do? So we have actually embarked on a time motion study and a job redesign for our nurses. Not because we want it, but we got slapped with the foreign quota for nurses. So we took this as an opportunity to do job redesign and look at the way we're working. And because one of the issues we have on the ground is regulations. The dialysis center is a highly regulated place. So how do you innovate in a regulated environment? So we did speak to the Ministry of Health and let us play in this sandbox for new designs that we are trying. 1 or 2 centers and experiment. If that works, then we will replicate in the others. So it is not so easy just to innovate when you have regulations placed on you. And for our case, it's a question of life and death. If you don't do it well, see, just because we are charity doesn't mean you're not going to get sued. The patients nowadays are very different and their caregivers are very different. And this is where we have to balance between what we want to innovate, governance issues, regulatory issues, and whether your staff have the necessary skill sets to understand. So we take an adversity and turn it into an opportunity to improve. The other issues we are talking about is more on the board and the senior management level. This concept of social impact, very nice to say, but very hard to understand and very hard to articulate. When I tell my board social impact, they turn back and look at me, so how are you meeting KPIs? What's your financial returns? It is a concept that is creeping into social services, but what does it look like? Many of us still grapple with. And sometimes when I explain social impact, it is not what NKF does. It's what NKF does with others. And we may not be the ones who push the last mile for social impact. So you cannot, as a board member, expect all social impact to be linked back to you. It is something else and somebody else that is contributing to this impact. The other issue of mindset, we have another slide to show you. Mindset is the hardest thing to change at board and at staff level. At board level, a lot of them come from not from the profit world, corporate world. They bring that mindset into the not-for-profit board and expect certain things to happen. It is not that easy. And having that mindset change and understanding is always the challenge. So what I always do recommend my board members is you go to ground, you go and see what's happening, and part of their orientation is they have to go to ground, attending events, and understanding what's happening. But on the same side, for senior management, to go to the corporate world and understand what's happening in the world, and understand what are the challenges and how people are adapting. Okay, on Saturday, I attended a SGH lecture dinner, and it was the president of NTU who gave the lecture. And one point struck. He said, in the future, nurses will earn more than doctors. Then it's like, how can nurses earn more than doctors? Because he was talking about treatment. A lot of people are looking at technology to treat, but where's the caring component? A lot of AI is taking over the doctor's work, but the caring is the one that is lacking, the human element. And that is where I think social workers, nurses, have a greater impact to play for the future than today. And this is how we can augment some of the things that we do. So the board and management must align. If that is not happening, a lot of things will not happen. We don't want to spend our time talking about politics, but I'd rather talk about what we're going to do in the future. The last point is strategy for the future. It starts today. We need to get out to see what's happening. I mean, I will be first to admit, NKF is a large and good organization, but we have been very busy providing dialysis treatment, and good dialysis treatment. But the world has changed. The family units have changed. The way we conduct dialysis will have to change. We are looking at self-dialysis, when patients will needle themselves 300 over times a year at home. How do you do that? And those are some of the future. Space is an issue. Our patients are now more educated. How do you help them understand the treatment and why are they treating? The one issue we have is end of life. How do you deal with end of life? And where is that conversation going to start? So the future for NKF is to work with hospitals, community, and with the families. So all our patients are, about 90%, are sited within 5 kilometers of a dialysis center. Why is that so? We want our patients to be reintegrated back into the community. There are other very good organizations out there, grassroots or community, that can actually support our patients. NKF doesn't have to do everything by itself. And the closer we work with other people, I think it is better for NKF for the future, for our patients and their families, and also for other communities to understand the challenges of kidney failure. Since I've come into NKF, I've known so many people who I didn't otherwise have known, have family members who have been struck with kidney failure. They all have been suffering in silence and in the background. And this is where the awareness must come, so that the future, I don't have so many patients. And that's our incentive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing, team. Yeah. So last but not least, we will have Dr. Ang Hak Seng, our Commissioner of Charities, to share with us. As you know, the COC oversees charities, the Institute of Public Character in Singapore, and its vision is to develop a well-governed and thriving charity sector with strong public support. So now we will have Dr. Ang share with us the COC vision, our co-regulation of the charity sector. Thank you, Dr. Ang.
Thank you. If you're wondering why we are playing with handphone here, because we can't see what's behind. So we're now using the handphone to project what is behind. Okay. My brothers and sisters. Initially, I was given 15 minutes to do this talk, but I'm going to cut short it to about half. So you bear with me, the speed is going to be fast. First, when I first took over as Commissioner of Charities, Straits Times took a picture of me and searched me with my old photograph. And this was the photograph that he took and came out. You recognize this gentleman? Indeed, once upon a time, I was a policeman. I was a policeman for almost 35 years. But by putting this photograph, tell you what is the job of a Commissioner of Charities. It's to tell you, you can do, but you cannot hide. Right? Yeah, very clear. So the next day, I requested the media to carry another of my photographs. And this time, Chao Pao published this photograph. This was the photograph that taken of me when I was in Health Promotion Board and subsequently to people associations. Here, what is my role? My role is a community builder. I empower and enable community. In fact, I want to share with you, my brother and sister, this is the bigger role of the Commissioner of Charities. Therefore, what is the vision of the Commissioner of Charities? Well, the vision is this. to build a thriving and trusted charity. But if you stare at this slide, which word comes first? Thriving. Why? Because trusted is the means, but the end is a thriving charity. So I'm very clear in my mind what is my mission and purpose. Our operating model in the past looked something like that. 2 boxes. First box is about regulation. Basically to tell you, please comply. Comply with the Charity Act. You all comply? Yes, of course. You all must say comply lah. Hey, comply. Comply with my charity regulation. Yes, comply. Comply with the fundraising reg, comply. Comply with the IPC reg, comply. So the other side is called outreach. And outreach, I come to you. This is the do and this is the don't. Comply. Yes. This operating model is getting obsolete. We need to evolve. And we indeed have evolved with times. This is the current operating model. This operating model is a big shift. It's a shift from saying that my job is only regulations to one that is co-regulation. Now, what does co-regulation mean? It means to say that everyone have the responsibility to ensure a thriving charity. And that means also the role of the donor, the role of the charity, the role of the beneficiaries. Let me elaborate a bit. First, the role of the donor. My brothers and sisters, every time when the donor gives money, and if they don't give money, they anyhow give. And then finally they found out, alamak, that charity is not a good charity. Who do they call? Commissioner of Charities. Yeah, I have many of this if you want to know. So I tell my donor, my dear brother and sister, first thank you for your heart. But your heart must be put in the right place. To put in the right place, we embark what we call a safer education. Safer education, safer giving. So we give 3 magic words to all the donors. Ask, check, and give. Simple or not? What's the first word? Ask. Second word? Check. Third word? Give. Ask. Make sure you ask which charity you are giving. What is the purpose? Check. Check my database to check indeed it's a real charity and not a fake charity. And after you have done all your hard work, give a lot lah. Simple, right? So that is what we have done. That's what we have done. We have educated. We are now quite aggressive in educating the public. My brother and sister, next is you as charities. As a charities, you must exercise self-disciplines. So what we have done? Well, we have simplified the code of governance. What is a code of governance? The code of governance actually is for you to do your own health check. You check your temperature, you check your blood pressure. To check is what? Instead of blood pressure and temperature is to check your internal control, check your board management, check your policy for conflicts of interest. Why? So that you yourself can improve. Not because I go and chase after you, but because you want to chase after yourself. And we provide a means for you to know where you are and where can you improve. But my brother and sister from the small charities, you always come to me and say, oh, 唔是我買，是我未曉. Right? Translate to English basically means it's not that I don't want, but it's because I don't know how. Actually, you don't have economy of scales. My brother have highlighted the shared services of iShine. And that is the shared services that why should you have your own technology system where you can rely on iShine that is cheap and good? Right? Hey, sister, sit down. I keep you, don't show me. Sit down. Cheap and good. Right? So my brother and sisters, we have shared services for you, small charity in particular. You have one small charities that is small charities, like for example for consultancies, we have worked with Institute of Chartered Secretary where they do consultancy for you free of charge. For leaderships, many of y'all got board leadership renewal. MVPC is here, my sister is here. MVPC will help you make sure that your board are staffed with people that can bring values. But, my brothers and sisters, there's another group of people that is part of the charity ecosystems, and that is the intermediary. The first group of intermediary is your apex organizations. A good example of apex organizations are, for us, we work with the charity sides. I mean, the religious side is your NCSS, National Churches, your Taoist Federation, Buddhist Federations, and the Hindu Endowment Boards, Mendaki and whatnot. Why? Because these federations have interest to ensure that their members are doing well. So we partner with them. Instead of telling them the do and the don'ts, we partner with them and they carry the weight together with us. What I say is something, but when what they say is another thing. You know not? Because no longer did I say, someone on top also say. You see the idea? Another group of people that we're working off with is your intermediary. Last week, you have heard that I signed an MOU with your commercial fundraiser. Very simple, no? Because I don't want you all go the easy way out to get a commercial fundraiser to raise fund for you and you do nothing. And you know what they do or not? Sometimes they contract to subcontract, until the person who go there and collect money on behalf, you ask them, what you are doing here? And some of them, unfortunately, I won't be open with you, some of them actually to the level of causing annoyance. And that erode trust for the charity. So I signed an MOU with them and say that, yes, you want business from all the charity here, right? You make sure that you brief the people, you check the people, so that when they go and ask for a donation, they do it with the heart, do it properly. Finally, donors, recipients, who say beneficiary cannot give. There are many beneficiaries today from giver, from a receiver to giver. It's not only about resilience, but more importantly, it's about what? It's about dignity, my brothers and sisters. Turning receiver to giver must be our job. Finally, I would like to share with you this proverb. This is a proverb that, who say we must learn only from the East and the West. Here, I learned from Africa. It says this: you want to go fast, you go alone. You want to go far, you go together. But Singapore, we change this. We want to go fast and far. Right, yes. And to do that, my brother and sisters, I cannot be the only one that's responsible for regulations. We are responsible for regulation. And that's why the shift is from regulations to co-regulations. All right, agreed? Sumpah, agreed? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ang. So now we've heard from all three, with NCSS sharing with us what their vision is, how they're going to support the sector. A lot of new initiatives, very interesting, very enlightening. And we also heard from Dr. Ang, the Commissioner of Charities, about how, the whole charity, this sector, the governance of our SSO, what they are doing, he's shared quite a lot about going forth. It will be co-regulation and how that can be done, right? And we also heard from Team NKF, the story of NKF, how they are dealing with all these challenges. And so now it's time for you to ask questions, yeah? We have about 10 minutes. So any questions now? Anybody ask any of the three gentlemen? Maybe you need some time to think about it, huh? So if not, then I have a question. And I think in the sharing, I think one issue that came up was volunteers, So what I want to ask is really all three gentlemen, what do you think is the role of volunteers going forth in this new environment? You know, maybe you could ask Dr. Ang, because I think earlier you also mentioned about volunteers, right?
My brother and sister, I share with you stories. One day, I was at the garden by the bay, and I saw an old lady happily eating rice, a box of rice, together with some nice food. So I walked to the lady and asked, Auntie, 这花水不? Basically translated to, this flower here, the flower very nice. No? Auntie said, yeah, 真水,真欢喜. 我来这岛5摆了. Auntie replied to me, I'm very, very happy, but I've been here 5 times. If you are as a volunteer and you heard this, I've been here 5 times, will you continue to volunteer? No? So my brother and sister, the direction for volunteerism is a meaningful and purposeful volunteerism. It's not that we are shortage of volunteer. It's we need to make sure that the volunteer is purposeful and meaningful. I hope this story anchored deep in everybody's mind as you embark your volunteerism journey.
Okay. Mr. Sim, NCSS, and you know, how does NCSS look at the role of the volunteer in this new, environment?
Okay, I think my brother here talked about volunteers. Really, you want to have a meaningful journey for your volunteers. So we have, over the last year or so, been doing a lot of work on redesign. How do we redesign the way we provide intervention? I think for the large part, we have been thinking about using professionals, right? So we have professionalized our services, and that's a good thing. But I think if we over-professionalize, so much so that we crowd out the space and there is no space for volunteers to come in, I think we have shortchanged ourselves. Volunteers bring with them a lot of skills that may not exist within our organization. Actually, they are passionate as well. And sometimes, of course, you have to manage particularly the more and over-passionate and zealous ones. But I think that there is more pros than cons, particularly if we are able to manage our volunteers well. So we have actually experimented with 10 organizations that were provided funding for them to hire a dedicated volunteer manager for 2 years. And these organizations, over the last 2 years, they have found that first, actually because they have someone dedicated to do this, the net increase in terms of, I will use the word man hours, because volunteers come in to provide services, the net increase is actually about 12 times. 12 man years. So one volunteer manager, when you are effectively using a volunteer, increases your capacity by 12. Right? So it is as if you are hiring 12 people instead of just one. And I think we need to be thinking about how we are better able to engage volunteers. So that's one. Because they bring in capacity, they bring in skills. But my earlier point also is that actually, if we continue to think about the need to involve the community, then it's a no-brainer. You cannot involve your community if you are not involving volunteers, because the community are your volunteers. And they may not be formal volunteers, but they can also be informal volunteers, because they can be out there doing a lot of things that enhances the quality of life. And when we look at this study, right, actually one of the biggest improvement in quality of life that a person will have is when they feel that they are part of the society, where they are able to contribute in some way. Not only are they just receiving, but they are involved, and not just present living in the community, but actually really involved in what is happening in the community. And so when you involve the community, who then involve your beneficiaries, I think they can live a life of dignity, which is what we want to drive towards. So don't think of volunteers as a difficult group to work with, but really inherent part of what you need to do if you want to enable your service users to live a life of dignity within the community.
Okay, thanks. Tim, anything you want to add, in how NKF looks at volunteers, uses volunteers, or, engage with volunteers, really?
I think one thing NKF strives to do is public education on healthy lifestyle. And our volunteers play a big part in that. Not so much as to help us go and do outreach, but by having volunteers and seeing the work that we do, they realize the impact of kidney failures and how and why they need to stay healthy. And seeing the hardships of the kidney failure patients, a lot of the volunteers go back knowing that they have learned something and they want to improve their lifestyle. And a lot of volunteers are children and students, and we are trying to reach them. Because a lot of times you can reach the children, I can reach the parents and grandparents who otherwise we have difficulties reaching to. So volunteers to us is not only they're helping us, but we are also educating them so that we can do more effective work. The other element of volunteers is we are encouraging our patients to be volunteers. And they're volunteering by giving educational talks. When they share their stories, their testimony, it is real. It is not a PowerPoint slide. When they conduct tours, they can show you their fistula. They can tell you the impacts of kidney failure. And this is where also it empowers the patients to go out and do a lot more and stay stronger in the journey.
Right. Okay, thanks. So volunteers look like, volunteers is to stay, within this new ecosystem that we want to create. They've always been around, but I guess this is really the time to relook and, into review their role and expand that role, but certainly it sounds like they are here to stay. So any questions from the floor? No? Okay, I think we only have what? Oh, there's one question. Good. Okay.
A very short question for our brother, Dr. Ang. Okay, I like your message about co-regulation and empowerment. I think these are very refreshing ideas. And I think it will bring really a much more effective organization all the way from the grassroots to the very top. The question is, have you considered going beyond charity? For example, just as a matter for consideration, it would be good to have a commissioner for fake news as well. Same idea, same idea of having the idea of empowerment, people making decisions, and then also co-regulation. Just a thought. In many other regulatory agencies as well, I think you could have the same thing. So you could be the evangelist for this idea and sweep it through the whole civil service. That would be good.
Thank you for the affirmation. And I want to share with everyone, and just to build on to what my dear brother have said. Indeed, this is the intentions of the government. The intention of the government in the past, you notice that every time when there's a problem, we always run to the government. And after a while, the government realized that we do nothing but solve problems. We become a fireman. And to the extent that you ask, we do. But Singapore, if you look at our 200 bicentennial celebration, we are here together, we are here today, it's not because you ask, I do. We are here today because you ask, we do. And that is the engine behind co-regulations. Therefore, you can hear more and more government departments coming forward to this concept that it's not about we work for you, but we work with you. Not only regulations, but in many other things that we are doing. So my brother, I take note of what you say. Yes, I will definitely continue to push this on because I sincerely believe in it. But more importantly, it built a better society for us. So, brother, I will do the job. Thank you. Thank you for the affirmation.
Okay. I think we've kind of ran out of time. So, so I just do a quick summary. I think from right up this morning till the sharing by the three speakers, we can very clearly see that, you know, Singapore, the social service sector, we're really on the cusp of transition, you know, transiting to a different environment. You know, the winds of change is already upon us, actually. And as we go further into this change, you know, I think some of the components, the important components that come up is very much about partnership, about collaboration, but also about very strong governance, taking on self-responsibility, you know, and expanding that scope of engagement. I think we heard the minister talking about joining the dots. That's been very important, and how even, you know, the sharing NCSS team is also a lot about connecting the dots, engaging the community, engaging with the clients, you know, at the whole area around productivity. So there are a lot of important components that come up as we design this change, you know, whether within our own organization, whether as a community of organizations, of the social service organization, as a society and as government. So I hope all of us, you know, good luck for this, you know, and but really I think all of us is moving together. I hope we all can move together, you know, to really create this change for the better. Yeah, thank you very much.
Let us give another round of applause for our speakers.
Ladies in the center. Yes, yes, yes. Lady in the center. Yes, yes, yes. Yes. Okay, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We hope you have found the sharing session insightful in understanding how the charity sector plans to transform in the upcoming years. Now, this is also a good segue into the next panel session, where we will be exploring and focusing on the best practices in accounting and finance for the charity sector.